Testing, 1, 2, 3. Are you a performer and find yourself on the go all the time? Whether that be from auditions, class, work, or even if you're on tour and you're going state from state to state and you need to figure out where you're gonna get your food, where you're gonna grocery shop, if there's any restaurants available. And sometimes that can be hard if you wanna eat healthy. Trust me, I know how it feels. I'm vegan and gluten-free, and sometimes it can be really hard to find food readily available for me, or at least like in massive quantities. And have you ever wondered why supermarkets are so big, but the produce section is like this itty bitty like quarter size of the store? Well, let's talk about that. So there are 6 milestones that has led us to where our diet is today. Those are the agricultural revolution, the introduction of refined sugars, the industrial revolution, the rise of big food, the chemical revolution, and the digital revolution. Are you ready to dive in? Let's go. The agricultural revolution came about when we went from a mainly hunter-gatherer society to creating settlements and stationary communities, which seems great. We had farms, we used animals as labor. However, there are a few costs. 1, there were fewer and less diverse nutrients. 2, rapid loss of bone density in humans, which is wild. Habitat loss, soil degradation, number 3. 4, increased spread of communicable diseases, which is crazy given that we're in COVID right now. And 4, societal hierarchy started to happen. Inequality, slavery, and genocide. So you can see in this first revolution, pivoting a little bit away from our ancestral roots, that it has affected us as a society and as humans. It's affected our bodies. And now the second revolution, which was the introduction to refined sugars. I think of like tea and coffee. So refined sugars were introduced in the 1600s. It was mainly a luxury enjoyed by, you guessed it, the wealthy. I'm not surprised. As the production grew cheaper, it was more readily available to the entire population. So more and more and more people started to consume sugar, which at the beginning, only a few people at one time consumed about a few pounds of sugar in a year. However, as production grew cheaper and more people started to enjoy it, on average, about one person consumed about 150 to 200 pounds of sugar per year. That's a lot. Is known to cause diabetes and obesity. It has such a negative effect on the body. This is really important as we dive deeper into these next revolutions because of hyperpalatability. Sugar is a hyperpalatable food. What is hyperpalatability, Colin? I will tell you, hyperpalatability is food that obviously tastes good. It's very palatable to the taste buds. However, it's very low in its nutrient density. This is important. Next, we have the Industrial Revolution. I picture buildings and skyscrapers. And what do you know? That's what happened. People moved from towns to cities. Wow! That led to people selling food, buying food, rather than harvesting and raising their own crops. We had to bring farming to the cities, which then caused us to increase the shelf life of foods so that food wouldn't spoil from transporting it from farms to cities. And also machines replaced animals as labor, which created great output in terms of getting food out to the population. At this time, during the Industrial Revolution, at one point, the world population was only about 700 million people. And over the course of like 300 years, the world's population went from 700 million people to 7 billion people. So how do you mass create food and get food out to the entire population? Machines helped, and putting preservatives in foods and different chemicals in foods to help shelf life. But does that actually help your body? The Industrial Revolution led to tons of new chemicals and toxins that went out into the environment, which is kind of nasty. So we got mass production of food, we got people living in cities and skyscrapers, we got new chemicals out into the air. What next? We have the rise of big foods. Nestle, Kellogg's, Post. All these companies were like big named brains in our society around the 1800s to 1900s. We got Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper. When Kellogg realized that he could steam a piece of grain and roll it into a little flaky cereal, he was onto something in terms of palatability. They used a combination of fat, sugar, and salt to increase the palatability of foods and find the bliss point where they could get their consumer hooked on their product. These companies marketed to kids. Kids love sugar. They really love sugars. What's next? Well, the chemical revolution came along. The chemical revolution started around World War II. Things like goldfish, juice boxes, and granola bars were all actually military inventions during that time. Nutrient-dense foods like butter and meats were shipped out to troops, and that left customers with highly processed alternatives like margarine and hydrogenated oils. Many chemical compounds originally used to produce bombs and nerve gas were repurposed for fertilizers and pesticides. So the result of the chemical revolution was food was really cheap, very abundant, highly processed, non-perishable, and covered in chemicals. Then you get the digital age where we're all just like on our phones, staring at screens, and the effect of blue light, like what does that have on your body and your physical being on the cellular level? So this is not to scare anyone, but it's more of an awareness. This was an awareness for me. I learned so much. Well, that was the evolution of the modern diet and the 6 milestones of where we are today. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.